The great Joe Louis. One of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time. If you are a fan of boxing, you have most probably already heard about the great Joe Louis. He was an American professional boxer who was nicknamed the Brown Bomber. Well, this guy is widely regarded as one of the greatest boxers of all time. From 1937 to 1949, he reigned as the world heavyweight champion. However, his life wasn't easy. He wasn't treated the way a professional boxer is treated nowadays. Hi guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video, I am going to tell you about the life of this great boxer. However, before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to this channel and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you never miss any updates. Now, without further ado, let's get into this. Early life. His real name is Joseph Louis Barrow, and he was born on May 13, 1914, in Lafayette in Alabama, United States. The legendary boxer was born in rural Chambers County, in a ramshackle dwelling on Bell Chapel Road. He was the seventh of a total 8 children of Lily Barrow and Monroe Barrow. You'll be surprised to know that Joe weighed 5 kilograms at the time of his birth. And we all know that African Americans were treated badly at that time. Although it was the time when blacks were freed from slavery, racism was still a major issue for all African Americans. Both of Joe's parents were former enslaved people. Here, it is important to note that Lily was half Cherokee. On the other hand, Monroe was predominantly African American. Joe suffered from a speech impediment. 2 years after his birth, his dad was committed to a mental institution. This is the reason why he knew very little of Monroe. According to various reports, his mother married a man named Pat Brooks around the year 1920. Pat was a local constructor, and he was told that Monroe had died while institutionalized. However, the reality was that Monroe didn't die, and he lived until the year 1938. During this time, Joe became a famous boxer. However, Monroe was unaware of his own son's success. Joe's family was discriminated against because of their ethnicity, and it was the year 1926 when his family moved to Detroit, Michigan after being shaken by a gang of white men in the Ku Klux Klan. For those who don't know, the Ku Klux Klan is basically an American white supremacist terrorist hate group, and their primary targets include African Americans, Jews, leftists, Muslims, atheists, Catholics, homosexuals, and immigrants. Joe's family eventually settled at 2700 Catherine Street in the Black Bottom neighborhood of Detroit. He went to Bronson Vocational School, where he learned cabinet making. With that being said, let's talk about his amateur career. Joe's boxing career. During the 1930s, the Great Depression hit Joe's family hard. However, he didn't get involved in gang activity. Instead, Joe decided to spend his time at a local youth recreation center at 637 Brewster Street in Detroit. Although his mom wanted him to learn to play the violin, Joe loved boxing, and he used to hide his boxing gloves inside his violin case. Finally, in 1932, Joe made his debut. He was 17 years old at that time. He lost this match to Olympian Johnny Miller. Joe later compiled a number of amateur victories, and he eventually won the club championship of his Brewster Street Recreation Center. He then won the Detroit Area Golden Gloves Novice Division Championship against Joe Bisky in 1933 before Joe lost in the Chicago Golden Gloves Tournament of Championships. Joe competed in the Golden Gloves Open Division in 1934 and won the light heavyweight classification as well as the Chicago Tournament of Champions against Max Bauer. During this time, his hand got injured and he had to skip the New York/Chicago Champions Crosstown bout for the Ultimate Golden Gloves Championship. Joe made a strong comeback in April of that year by winning the light heavyweight U.S. Amateur Champion National AAU Tournament in St. Louis in Missouri. Long story short, his record was 50-4 by the end of his amateur career. Now, let's talk about his professional career. He competed professionally from 1934 to 1951, remained the world heavyweight champion from 1937 until his temporary retirement in 1949. This is the longest span of any heavyweight title holder. His amateur performances had attracted the interest of numerous professional promoters. Soon, a black Detroit area bookmaker, John Roxborough, was representing Joe. Although Joe was a really talented boxer, he was discriminated against by white managers. In fact, he explained in his autobiography that white managers would have no real interest in seeing a black boxer work his way up to title contention. John knew a boxing promoter in the Chicago area, Julian Black, who had a stable of mediocre boxers against which Joe could hone his boxing skills. Julian also became a part of the management team and he hired Jack Blackburn as Joe's trainer. All of Joe's initial professional fights were in the Chicago area. On July 4, 1934, Joe made his professional debut against a boxer named Jack Kraken. Joe won by knockout and earned $59 in the first round. Well, $59 in that year is equivalent to more than $1,000 in 2020. The first year of his professional boxing was amazing and he won all 12 of his professional fights. It was September 1934 when Roxborough was pressured by some members of the Michigan State Boxing Commission to have Joe signed with white management. However, John refused. Joe's management was finding him bouts against legitimate heavyweight contenders. However, the problem was that many white Americans had become wary of the prospect of another black champion in the wake of Jack Johnson's reign atop the heavyweight division. It was an era of severe anti-black repression and Jack's unrepentant masculinity, as well as marriage to a white woman, engendered an enormous backlash. It also limited opportunities for black fighters in the heavyweight division. We can surely say that black boxers were denied championship bouts. It had become essential to make a change in management to help Joe rise to national prominence at that time. A boxing promoter named Mike Jacobs sought out Joe's handlers in 1935. Black, as well as John, continued to carefully shape his media image. They drafted 7 commandments for Joe's personal conduct. Some of them included live and fight clean, never engage in fixed fights, never gloat over a fallen opponent, and never have his picture taken with a white woman. Because of these efforts, this legendary boxer was portrayed by the white media as a modest and clean-living person. Joe fought 13 times in 1935. He was becoming successful and the white media was overcoming its reluctance to feature a black contender. It also showed that the mid-1930s boxing desperately needed a marketable hero. Edward Van Ness, a NY Times columnist, wrote about Joe: "Louis is a boon to boxing. Just as Dempsey led the sport out of the doldrums, so is Louis leading the boxing game out of a slump." Although the mainstream media was starting to embrace Joe, it didn't mean that people stopped opposing the prospect of another black heavyweight champion. By the end of 1935, he was ranked #1 contender in the heavyweight division and he also won the Association Press Athlete of the Year award. In 1937, Joe won the match against Jim Braddock and won the heavyweight crown. He also set the record as the new heavyweight king and earned the title of Brown Bomber, a title Joe kept for around 12 years. This guy secured his heavyweight title 13 times between 1939 and 1942. Joe then registered with the Army in 1942 and by 1945, he was promoted to the rank of technical sergeant. After Joe got out of the Army, he suffered financially. We will also talk about why he was in debt. So, Joe retired from boxing on March 1, 1949. However, later made a brief comeback before officially retiring from boxing on October 26, 1951. How Joe spent his final years. Do you want to know the reason why Joe was important to Black America? Well, he was not only a great boxer but also a great human being who cared for his people. He established a charity bout for the Navy Relief Society on January 9, 1942. He raised at least $90,000 for the U.S. Army Defense Fund. Unfortunately, it destroyed his future finances. The IRS credited the amounts as taxable income paid to Joe. And after the Second World War was over, the IRS pursued the issue. Joe emerged from his wartime service significantly in debt. The IRS announced in 1950 that Joe owed the government more than $500,000. This was one of the reasons why Joe had to return to the ring after announcing his retirement. Another reason why he ended up in debt was that most of the proceeds from his matches went to his handlers. Reports suggest that Joe earned more than $4.6 million during his boxing career. However, he himself received only around $800,000. This legendary boxer was extremely generous to his family and he used to pay for houses, cars, as well as education for his parents and siblings. After Joe left boxing, he invested in a number of businesses. He wanted to earn money, however, all of his businesses eventually failed. He launched the Joe Louis Restaurant, the Joe Louis Milk Company, a softball team called the Brown Bombers, the Joe Louis Insurance Company, Joe Louis Punch, and Joe Louis Pomade, which was a hair product. He also tried earning money from a horse farm, the Louis Rower PR firm, and the Rumboogie Cafe. Moreover, Joe's entrusting of his finances to Mike Jacobs haunted him. After the IRS tax bill of $500,000 was assessed, the need for cash precipitated Joe's post-retirement comeback. He earned a significant amount of money after his comeback, however, the incremental tax rate in place was 90% at that time. This meant that the boxing proceeds didn't even keep pace with interest on his debt. As a result, Joe owed more than $1 million in taxes and interest to the government by the end of the 1950s. Joe had to engage in several activities outside the ring to earn money. The legendary boxer had to greet tourists to the Caesars Palace Hotel in Las Vegas and appear on quiz shows. He even had to become a professional wrestler. Joe remained a famous celebrity during his twilight years. Joe was friends with former rival Max Schmeling and mobster Frank Lucas. Frank was disgusted with the government's treatment of Joe while Max provided him with financial assistance during Joe's retirement. Joe was eventually able to live comfortable toward the end of his life. According to various reports, drugs took a toll on him in his later years. For example, Joe was hospitalized after collapsing on an NYC street in 1969 and he spent 5 months at the Colorado Psychiatric Hospital in 1970. Joe revealed in a 1971 book, Brown Bomber, by Barney Nagler, that the 1969 collapse was caused by his use of cocaine. On April 12, 1981, Joe passed away because of cardiac arrest in Desert Springs Hospital near Las Vegas. Joe was last seen viewing the Larry Holmes Trevor Berbick Heavyweight Championship just a few hours before he died. Max acted as a pallbearer and Joe's funeral was also paid in part by Max. Joe Louis is among the greatest heavyweight champions of all time. In the end, let me tell you that his cultural impact was felt outside the ring. In fact, Joe is the first African American to achieve the status of a nationwide hero within the U.S. Moreover, Joe Louis was also a focal point of anti-Nazi sentiment leading up to and during the Second World War due to his historic rematch with a German boxer named Max Schmeling, which occurred back in 1938. This man won 66 out of his 69 professional boxing matches. And he won 52 of them by knockout. That's why Joe Louis is one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time. Do you agree with us? Tell us in the comments below. Final thoughts. That's all for today's video and thanks for watching it. If you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also, don't forget to share your thoughts and valuable feedback with us in the comments section below. Lastly, if you have not already subscribed to this channel, subscribe to it, and press the bell button so you will be notified each time we upload an interesting video on this channel. And while you are here, click to watch one of these 2 videos that are appearing on your screen. We will see you there. Take care and stay tuned.